So former Congressman Ron Paul, one of the most constitutionally minded members of Congress and a staunch defender of our U.S. Constitution, back in 2017, he penned an open letter to the Michigan legislature that was considering a constitutional convention under Article 5. He wrote in his letter, "The U.S. Constitution is not the problem, and an Article 5 convention is not the solution. Make no mistake, the threat of losing our constitutionally protected rights at a convention which will be attended by powerful, well-financed special interests and establishment insiders is very real. There is much to be done to save our ailing republic and restore liberty, but a convention in our current climate is not the answer." Also, Congressman Thomas Massie, currently one of the most constitutionally minded members of the House of Representatives, a staunch defender of our Constitution, he tweeted back in 2018, "I don't support a convention of states. I don't support a COS. If my colleagues won't follow the present Constitution, why would they follow a new one?" Then Massie again on December 9th of 2021 tweeted, "Show me a single state where constitutionalists comprise a majority of the state legislature. At this point in history, an Article 5 convention of the states would be a disaster. Does your state have a constitutionalist majority? Do you trust the delegates or the elected representatives of your state to send delegates who would represent the Constitution?" So since 1787, the U.S. has chosen to not run the risk of having a new convention. We've never had this ever since the original Constitutional Convention, because such a convention would certainly threaten our God-given rights as safeguarded by the Constitution. So what needs to be done? What can and should we do about it? First, we have to stop new applications from passing. Then we have to rescind previous applications that have already been passed by various states. And then we have to hold your elected representatives accountable to the Constitution. And I'll touch on how to do all those. When it comes to stopping a new constitutional convention, at jbs.org under the Stop a Con page, if you go to the Action Tools area on our webpage, we have a list of cross-examination questions that you should ask those state legislators who say they're for a convention of states. If they can't answer these questions, we're in trouble, ladies and gentlemen. So the first question you could ask your state legislator who thinks it's a good idea is, if the idea of an Article 5 convention is premised on the fact that Congress is overstepping its authority and not obeying the Constitution, what would make you so certain that adding new wording to the Constitution would change anything? A good follow-up to that would be the Alien and Sedition Acts were passed in 1798. Among other things, they limited freedom of speech and the press. This happened a mere 7 years after the ratification of the Bill of Rights. Given that historical precedent, how can you be certain that this proposed application to Congress to call a convention is not just a huge waste of time, but is instead a significant risk with little payoff? So in other words, just 7 years after we had the Bill of Rights, there was this law passed by Congress that limited people's free speech. It was the Alien and Sedition Acts. So who's to say that even if you get good amendments out of a convention of states, that a few years later they're just going to ignore those? And if they ignore those, wouldn't that whole thing just be a waste of time? Or even lead to horrible amendments, perhaps, even instead? Another question to ask your legislators: do you agree that there has not been a federal constitutional convention since 1787? And they probably say, "Oh yeah, there hasn't been one since then." Okay, so follow up. Would you agree that the same rules, procedures, and options used in 1787 could also be used in a new convention? If the same rules and procedures and options were used then, because they probably say, "Oh yeah, that's just the precedent." Well, we know what happened at the original one, so if they follow the same pattern they used before, that's also not good. Another follow-up for them: in 1787, the Philadelphia Convention passed a resolution to conduct the process in secret. That's right, the original Constitutional Convention was done in secrecy. That is what happened at the time. Do you have any specific legal authority to show that a new convention could not do the same thing today. So imagine if a new con today, an Article 5 convention, if they do the thing in secret, you don't even know what happens or what happened at it till years or decades later. I mean, would you trust a secret convention today? No C-SPAN cameras, no knowledge of what's going on except whatever they voluntarily let you know. Oh, this is what's coming out of the convention. It's looking good, folks. Don't worry about it. Another question to ask is, what specific legal authority can you present that a convention called under Article 5 of our current Constitution will be different from the Constitutional Convention called under the Articles of Confederation? Remember, they had limitations then. They violated them. Many states that called for a convention in 1787 put specific limiting language in their convention delegations to simply amend the Articles of Confederation. Yet they completely scrapped those and drafted a new Constitution, right? So what specific legal authority can you cite that would prevent a new convention from doing the same thing? Ask your legislator if he or she supports the Convention of States this question. What's the authority that's going to prevent it from going a runaway? Right? Another question you could ask your legislator is, Article 13 of the Articles of Confederation required that any amendments or alterations of the Articles had to be agreed to in a Congress of the United States and be afterward confirmed by the legislatures of every state. However, the 1787 convention changed both the manner of ratification and the required threshold for ratification, reducing it from 100% to 75, or 3/4 of the states. What specific legal authority do you have to suggest that the ratification process could not be changed again by a new convention? Remember, these convention advocates, they always state, don't worry, Article 5 says that whatever comes out has to be approved by 3/4 of the states. Well, they had a limitation back then and they didn't abide by it. So how do you know they won't do the same thing again? What assurance do we have that you could legally cite this can't happen again? You know, the quotes that I mentioned earlier from Justice Warburger and the other Supreme Court Justice Goldberg, and even letters written by other legal experts, constitutional law professors, against a constitutional convention, we have those in a PDF document called What Legal Experts Have Said about a constitutional convention under Article 5 of the United States Constitution, including the actual possibility of a runaway convention. This is a document that you could print out. You don't have to read it. You just got to give this to your state legislators when they're trying to push this convention of states idea. And you can find this again, jbs.org, on the Stop a Constitutional Convention page. On the left is Action Tools, and when you click on that Action Tools page are all these PDFs, and that's one of the ones there. Because asking those tough questions and giving them this expert testimony of why it's a bad idea could hopefully help to stop it from passing in your state. The second point earlier of what we have to do, we need to rescind applications for a con-con. Maybe your state's already passed this con-con application. So what can we do about it? Well, we have to rescind that previous application. What does it mean to rescind? Well, basically it just means to repeal, revoke, or withdraw your state's previous application to Congress to call an Article 5 convention. You can do so. If you pass it before, it's not the end of the world, as long as the convention hasn't been called yet, that is. You still have a chance to repeal it. In fact, this is just one example. There's many to choose from, but Georgia in 2004, they passed a bill to an act to repeal Joint Resolution 775 of 1976, which called on Congress to balance the federal budget through submitting an appropriate amendment to the states for ratification or an alternative to call a constitutional convention for this purpose, and to disavow any other calls for a constitutional convention by any means expressed. So that's what I just read right there. So what Georgia did was, back in 1976, they applied for a convention for the excuse being for a balanced budget amendment, and in 2004, they not only repealed it, but they also repealed that application that they passed back then, and every other one passed since then. In fact, this resolution said there is no need for rather there is great danger in a new constitution or in opening the constitution to sweeping changes, the adoption of which would only create legal chaos in this nation and only begin the process of another 2 centuries of litigation over its meaning and interpretation. They were warning the Georgia legislature of 2004. And in case you're wondering, this resolution to repeal at that time, every resolution they had passed for a convention prior, this was passed by a Republican-controlled House, a Republican-controlled Senate, and even signed by their Republican governor at the time. If they did it, you can do it too in your state. Your state can do it as well. Again, that document and other examples of rescissions that have passed, in fact, the Illinois state legislature did something right. About 2 weeks ago, Wednesday of last week, they passed a resolution rescinding all of their state's previous applications for an Article 5 convention. The Illinois legislature. Now, you know, sometimes a squirrel often finds a nut. So in this case, the Illinois legislature, they actually did the right thing in this one rare instance here. So you could print out this example or other ones that we have on the website and also give these to your legislators. Hey, this is a good model that our state should pass if your state's have been one that's already passed the CONCON application. Look at the wording in this one. So this is what the CONCON Action Tools page looks like on jbs.org. Again, you get here by going to jbs.org, click on Action Projects, scroll down to where it says Stop a Constitutional Convention, then you're taken to this page. If you click on the CONCON Action Tools, you're taken to this page. And there's where all those PDFs, you'll find them there. You can print these out and use them to educate your legislators to stop a new CONCON from passing or to rescind your state's previous one. So how do we hold them accountable to the Constitution? What is JBS doing about it? Well, the John Birch Society, our affiliate magazine, The New American, publishes the Freedom Index, which publishes a score every quarter, every 6 months, of how members of Congress have voted on the top 10 votes that have occurred in that last 6-month period or so, and whether that vote was in accordance to the Constitution or not. And you can also find us online on thenewamerican.com and click on Freedom Index to find a PDF of those Freedom Indexes. But we also produce something called Congressional Scorecard, which is another way that you could educate people in your area to keep your elected member of the House or Senate accountable to the Constitution. This is a good educational tool. Now, I have to say about the Congressional Scorecard that these are distributed by local citizens to promote and defend the American principles of individual liberty and limited constitutional government through education. This scorecard that we produce is not meant to promote any particular candidate or political party. The John Birch Society does not endorse political candidates specifically, but we do show you how those who are in office voted according to the Constitution or not. So bills are selected for their constitutional implications and their cost to voters. That's what's in the scorecard here. So this is an example of a congressional scorecard. Congressman Jody Hice of Georgia, he represents the 10th Congressional District of Georgia. If you look at his current scorecard, he currently has 100%. So out of the top 6 votes that went into the scorecard, the Freedom Index has 10 votes, but the scorecards that we produce, they picks just 6 votes. And those, of the 3 votes that he did vote on, he voted the right way. So he has currently 100%. And you could use this to educate voters to show those in your community how he's voted on certain issues. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, also a congresswoman of Georgia. You see here that she has a 100% score. She voted the right way according to the Constitution 6 out of 6 times. And what's nice about this scorecard, it shows you, it tells you a description about the vote, and inside of it, when you download the PDF, it has an even bigger description if you want to learn more about that vote. But it also tells you the part of the Constitution that vote is, whether we rated it good or bad, what that rating was based off of. In this case, most of them, actually all the votes here, were based on Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. So read Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and you'll be able to see how voting either yes or no was in accordance with the Constitution. In her case, she voted no on all of these bills, which was the constitutional thing to do in her case. So how do you think Senator Warnock of Georgia, how do you think U.S. Senator Warnock turned out on our scorecard here? Does he vote according to the Constitution? Well, this is what his scorecard currently looks like. Out of the 6 votes in the Senate that we use because of their constitutional limitations, he scored a 0 out of 6. So again, this is for educational purposes, so you know how your senator or Congress, a member of the House voted. So what we need to do are the 3 E's. We need to do EEE. What is EEE? Educated electorate is essential. So by that, this is how we're going to stop this thing. Education is foundational. Education is the key. We have lots of reprints of articles that we publish in the New American Magazine. One of the articles that we've printed there, that we've reprinted, is Nullification versus Constitutional Convention, which is an excellent article that explains how the process of nullification is a better alternative to trying to stop all the unconstitutional federal overreach, why states should be using nullification instead of an Article 5 convention. This one was written by Joe Wolverton. And this other article, recently written by Peter Rakowski, is an excellent practical article about nullification, what state legislatures are doing, because some states are in fact using nullification. In fact, the state legislature of Wyoming recently nullified a ton of unconstitutional federal gun control laws. So states are already saying no to the federal government. And the beauty about nullification is that it only takes one state to say no to the federal government, whereas the convention process, you need to wait on 34 states to get together to maybe do something good, and chances are it won't even be that good. So we have those reprints available.